It's weird that anyone would want David Cameron's opinion on Brexit, given how he honestly doesn't seem to want to have any part of it himself, but he's decided to come out this week and say that, well, he doesn't think that no deal is a good idea. Well, it probably isn't the best idea. It would be nice if we could get the Europeans to compromise on something and agree to a deal that wasn't shit. A deal that wasn't essentially further surrender, which is it's even worse than what we had before when we were actually in the European Union. A deal that will require us to adhere to all of the standards and rules and regulations of the European Union, being in the customs union, having a backstop, all this sort of stuff, without having any kind of veto power or legislative input in the EU. That's what Theresa May is taking to the Europeans, and that's what they've agreed to, but they can't seem to get through Parliament. I wonder why. I mean, at least almost everyone on both sides of the aisle can agree that this is a terrible deal and puts us in a worse position. I mean, Mog's been saying it for ages, Batten's been saying it for ages. It's just obvious to anyone who looks at it, right? But Cameron's alternative the alternative is obviously no deal, and he's like, oh, that's not a good idea. Well, okay, but is it a better or worse idea than becoming a client state of the European Union, which means becoming a client state of Germany and France? And the answer is, of course, no. I love the way that David Cameron is being blamed for Brexit because he's the one who called the referendum. But they have to understand that UKIP was polling, wasn't it something like 15% or something? And it was rising, and the membership was rising, and the Conservatives could see the way the wind was blowing. This was an idea whose time had come. And lo and behold, so the Conservatives, listening to the electorate for the first time ever, the Conservatives called the referendum and they lost. The Believers won. Remain BTFO'd, and now, David Cameron divided the country. No, the country was already divided. These fault lines were already there. And honestly, it's the raw stoicism of the British at this point that is pulling us through this, because it certainly isn't any leadership from Parliament. The electorate has been remarkably firm on this position, and it is all down, in my opinion, to the way that the European Union is treating Britain. The Telegraph appears to be one of the few pro-Brexit papers left, as a bunch of the other ones have unironically been bought out. Like the Daily Mail has been changed hands from sort of a Brexiteer side to the Remain side, unbelievably. But the British themselves, the people themselves, we're not taking this shit. We're not taking this shit. For example, the Telegraph say here, 44% of people in the latest opinion poll agreed that Britain should just leave the European Union with no deal if there are no more concessions from the EU, which there have been at all none. No concessions whatsoever. In fact, that's precisely what he puts here. No concessions whatsoever. That doesn't mean that we don't have a class of absolute traitors in Parliament at the moment. And my God, guys, right? When it comes around to the next election in like 4 years, however long it's going to be, we have just got to vote for pro-Brexit politicians. I don't even care if they're UKIP, even though I'm a member of UKIP. I don't even care at this point, right? I just want the Remainers gone. I want them to suffer politically. I want them to lose their careers for being such treacherous snakes. For example, right? This is this is just the arch example of this, right? Tony Blair is playing worm tongue to Alexander Macron, telling him to hold firm on Brexit and force us into the customs union. Tony, you fucking traitor. How about you get fucked? How about you move to the Middle East or some other place that you fucked up and leave our country alone? For once, stop trying to fuck everything around you up. For the love of God, man. This is just absolutely amazing, right? Literally, he's advising Macron. He's telling him to hold firm over the negotiations, because otherwise Britain might not be in such a disadvantageous position, which obviously is going to be bad for Europe. But you know what? At this point, fuck the EU. Fuck it. I hope the EU burns. I really do. I hope the EU collapses in on itself just for the way it's treating my country. And fuck these politicians and ex-politicians, apparently. One Conservative MP, it is totally unacceptable for a former Prime Minister to go around the heads of European countries and undermine the government's position. Yeah, I would call that treason. Okay? I would call that fucking treason at this point. That is what a traitor does, Tony. You absolute shit. I can't believe you would actually go out of your way to do this. Like, you are deliberately hurting the country. You are hurting the prospects of the people in the country, and you don't even see... I mean, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you going to our opposition and saying, by the way, if you do this, this, and this, you'll do well out of it? Why are you doing that? I just don't get it, right? And so Theresa May, apparently today, is flying to Strasbourg for some last-ditch Brexit talks. No fucking point, because the European Union has compromised on nothing. Absolutely fucking nothing. Theresa May's deal is the worst thing that you could propose, and it puts us in the weakest possible position. And then you had like Jeremy Corbyn going, well, I mean, the European Union is afraid of no deal, so I want that taken off the table. Why? If they're afraid of that, you say, right, okay, this is our position, and we'll negotiate from here, shall we? You know, and they're like, oh, God, and it's like, okay, well, then you can start making concessions, and then we might make a few ourselves. And we'll go through this together until we both get an agreement that we can both live with, or we go for the thing that you fear the most, which is no deal. They're afraid of that. They are way more afraid of that than the British public are. The British public want that. That's 44% think we should leave with no deal at this point. 44%, it was like 30% a few months ago, and that was the most popular position over Remain, which was 29%. Now it's up to 44%. I mean, like, the people want to leave. This is the most consistent and popular position in the country right now, right? The government, I know what you guys are doing. I know what you're doing. You're afraid, right? You're deeply fucking afraid because you think, well, God, there's going to be damage to the economy. People will lose their jobs. And then that will land on our shoulders. That will be our political legacy, right? No one is going to blame you. Well, okay, that's not true. There are going to be a bunch of hardcore whining Ramonas who are going to be like, yeah, this is all your fault, blah, 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 right? But the majority of the country who wants to leave, who understand that no deal, the European Union is not playing ball and we just have no choice at this point but to leave, most of us, we understand. We understand that the European Union is putting you in an impossible position on purpose. They're doing it to hurt you for having the fucking temerity to call a Brexit referendum and to have people actually allowed to have their vote. Of course they fucking hate you. Of course they want to hurt you. And if you just came out and said this strongly and said, look, I have done everything I can for 2 years, but fuck the EU, they're not willing to negotiate. They're not willing to compromise. All they're going to do is take, and beat us down step by step by step until we get to the point where we're at the fucking 11th hour now. There is nothing left to talk about, really. You couldn't get any kind of other resolutions through Parliament at this point. There isn't time to draft anything. There isn't time to debate it. It's just going to be like, can we get the extension now? Why are you even asking for an extension? Because you know what they're going to ask for, don't you? Billions of fucking pounds! £1 billion a month over any Brexit delay if Theresa May is forced to ask for an extension. What? Are they fucking insane? Are you insane for countenancing this? What do you do if your fucking negotiating opponent is treating you like you are a piece of shit? You get up and you fucking walk away. Jeremy Corbyn, you know this. Mr. Oh, you don't want no deal because they're afraid of it. Unbelievable. It's unfucking believable, right? And then you get shit like this in The Guardian. Think Commonwealth can save Brexit Britain? That's utter delusion from Kevin Rudd, the ex-Labour Prime Minister of Australia, right? Compare that to Tony Abbott writing in The Spectator, the ex-Conservative or Liberal, I think they're called them there, Prime Minister of Australia, saying Britain's going to do great. There's nothing to worry about. This is all a storm in a teacup and everyone outside can't see it. Well, here we get the opposite opinion from, obviously, the Western-hating left-wingers. And I've obviously got to that point where I think the left just generally kind of hates itself and generally kind of hates the country that it's in. And it's no different. It's absolutely no different. Nothing new under the sun. Like, go back. In fact, I actually have, right? Believe it or not, right? I actually happen to have in my pocket a copy of George Orwell's Notes on Nationalism. I happen to have had this, right? It's always been the same. It's always been the same, right? He actually calls this. In fact, look, I can go straight to the page. Anglophobia. Within the intelligentsia, a derisive and mildly hostile attitude towards Britain is more or less compulsory, but is an unfaked emotion in many cases, right? That's The Guardian. That is the fucking Guardian, right? Combine that with the intelligentsia's love of communism, Guardian, again, we put ourselves in exactly the same position every single time, right? Where basically the left wants to see Britain get cucked. And it's really sickening to me that the Conservatives aren't speaking with one voice at this point, going, well, obviously we're pro-Britain. If the left is going to be anti-Britain, that's our position. But anyway, right, let's go through this, because this is just such a fucking annoying thing. It's like, oh, look, Australia, New Zealand and Canada has only got 65 million people. That doesn't come within a bull's roar of Britain's adjacent market of 450 million Europeans. And because I wasn't able to organise a free trade deal with India, no one can. Oh, it's all bad for Britain. You're about to all die outside of the European Union. And don't even go looking to America, right? The Brexiteers turn to the great economic chimera, the US, as final salvation. The irony is the current wave of nationalism, isolationism, and protectionism that they so ruthlessly exploited in the Brexit referendum has also been unleashed in the US. Oh, this doesn't sound like fear-mongering, does it, right? Donald Trump's America has little, if any, room in its political imagination for maintaining existing bilateral free trade agreements, let alone negotiating mutually advantageous new ones. On what do you say that, right? Just because Trump is having other concerns with like Japan or fucking Canada or something like that, right? You can't get away from the fact that literally less than a month ago, Donald Trump welcomes new UK-US deal, promising very, very substantially increased trade after Brexit, right? He is not saying what you're saying. You can keep saying, well, Donald Trump's an isolationist nationalist. He doesn't want to do any deals, but that's just not fucking true. Okay? You're fucking lying in The Guardian, the home of lies at this point, the home of bullshit Remainer self-hatred. And so now there is a petition to the Queen to dissolve Parliament, suspend Parliament, the current session, until the 2nd of April to prevent those goddamn fucking traitors in Westminster from thwarting Brexit. I will, of course, leave a link to this in the description, and I do absolutely recommend that if you're in Britain, you sign this and you share it with your friends. Even if they voted Remain, you say, listen, it doesn't really matter at this point. It was very, very clear. The referendum said, we will either stay in the European Union or we will leave the European Union. The Conservative government were very clear that these were the two options. They didn't say anything about a deal. They didn't say anything about how it was going to be done. It was just whether the British public wanted to stay or leave. We voted. We have to leave. That's the deal. That's what democracy is. This must be done.